I'm going to just briefly go to the agenda. Okay, and well, welcome. I guess I need to call the meeting to order. I'm Nancy Van Dale, chairperson of the NCAC Bylaws Subcommittee, and I call this meeting to order at 1:33 p.m. This feedback session, it's an informational meeting only, no decisions to be made. But I'm just going to ask the subcommittee to introduce themselves, and then Candace, if you could introduce yourself too. Mark, do you want to start?
Sure. Mark Everett, current chair of the NCAC.
Thank you. And Tom?
Tom Sipe. I'm the editor of this document you're about to be exposed to.
Thank you. And Susan? I'm going in the order of the pictures that I see on the screen.
Susan Schomburg.
Wonderful member. And
Yeah,
Wyatt?
sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, Wyatt Angelo, just a member.
No, not just a member. Everybody is amazing. And Candace, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Candace Miller, just another, I guess, citizen of Nesco, and also helps with the calendar.
Yeah, you're on the communications task force and really helpful to us. Thank you. And Michael Beachley, I think, is going to join us later. Our scribe and the NCAC parliamentarian. So basically today we're going to talk about the proposed policies, procedures, and references document that our subcommittee has been working on all year. That is a supplement to the bylaws that we worked on last year. And then we're going to follow that up with proposed bylaws amendments that we realized we needed to do as we were working on the policies, procedures, and references. And in some cases, we'd actually planned for this once the document was done. In other cases, we kind of discovered these bylaws changes as we were going through. And then briefly talk about the membership meeting coming up on May 31st to adopt the PP&R, as we're calling it, and the bylaws amendments. So I'm going to, any other comments on the agenda? So this is a very casual meeting. Please feel free to ask questions at any point, Candace, and we're going to go through the policies and procedures document fairly briefly as a presentation that Tom prepared. And what it has is an overview of the various categories, and then there's detailed slides if you're interested in the detail. So in the meeting packet that you put up for us on the website, there are a number of documents, and let me just go ahead and share that for anyone who's looking, because you'll be able to see this in the meeting packet. Which is not where I went. Anyway, I'll just say, so in there, the important documents are the policies and procedures, R36 document that actually lays everything out that we'll be voting on, the policies and procedures and references present feedback presentation that Tom will be going through the slides. And then, and is there an updated one, Tom, that we should include in there, or is the one that we had from last night still good?
Yeah, last night it's good for at least 24 hours.
Okay, sounds good. And then there's the current bylaws are in there, the currently approved, and then the current version of the bylaws that with the red line changes that we're going to be proposing, that we are proposing, and then a clean version of the updated bylaws are in there, and then a presentation or a document on what changes we're recommending to the bylaws. So it only talks about the changes and why we're proposing those to the bylaws. So those are the main documents to look at. I think there's a few other things in that folder about what we're trying to do and the schedule and that kind of thing. So those are the main ones. So, but we'll be showing everything on the screen as well. So Mark, would you like to make any opening remarks before we start? And I just want to say, while Mark's getting his
Uh-huh.
microphone on, that Mark has been attending almost all of our meetings and been a vital part of the process. And the executive board has also been a really helpful part of the process. So thank you very much, Mark.
Yeah, no, I don't really have anything to say. I mean, I just I commend the work of both committees. Today it's the bylaws committee and or subcommittee. And so I like you said, I'm pretty familiar with it, but it's been changing the last 3 or 4 days a little bit, but just great work and thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I did receive a call from Sarah Absher from Tillamook County this morning. She's reviewed the documents as well and was very, very positive about everything. She had a question about some of the changes we did in terms of the removal from office for task force members. So we went through that because it's when you just look at the bylaws document itself, it looks a little strange. But we went through that. She said thinks it all looks terrific, and she's ready and eager to accept our packet when we send that out, probably tomorrow, for the county council review. So, but she asked us to pass on her kudos. So it's very nice. So with that said, I think, Tom, I'm going to throw it over to you with the presentation.
Did you notice how fast I did it this time?
I tell you, getting that down.
No, I just had everything while you were talking.
Okay.
Well, I probably should get ready.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So let's see if we can get slide
Looks
mode.
nice and clean. I think your new version of Office is looking nice. Oh, it's because you're showing it as a presentation.
I'm
too.
showing it as a slideshow, which is
Yeah.
probably what we should be doing. The problem is that I like to do a live edit and change things as we talk about them. And I can't do that from the slideshow view. But
Sure.
anyway, so to give you a little bit more context, this is an extraction of most of the other document. There's a couple of things that are not here, but that are not really part of the content, which is sort of background. But this is basically all there is in the first 2 sections of the document. We have some acronym definitions and such. And I was interested to note that last time I was in a meeting that Sarah was in, she lectured she lectured us on the difference between shall and should.
Oh,
Interesting.
did she? And you were right there with her.
Oh, yeah.
We've all been learning that.
Okay, so the policy and procedures have a single slide. There's backup slides if you're interested. The references are just too bulky to put into the slide set, so that's the part that's not in there. In terms of importance, the thing that is most important, in my opinion, are the policies. These are the philosophies and how the organization and the officers thereof. Oh, there's a thereof for you. Right? Should be acting and be able to. We can't possibly anticipate all the different decisions that will need to be made. That this is sort of an outline of philosophies of you should make things that are consistent with these directives. Any questions on that? Okay. So as I say, policies are guidelines and not specifically addressed in the bylaws or procedures. So,
and I'm not sure I said this in the introduction, but the policies, procedures, and references fall under the guidelines of the bylaws. They're there to supplement the bylaws. The bylaws will take precedence. Oregon public meeting law takes precedence. But these are to supplement that. So thank you.
Yeah, we covered that in the bylaws themselves, gave us an out to not have to put too much detail. Wyatt, I think this one's yours.
You're muted, Wyatt.
Yeah, my apologies. When we submitted the bylaws to the full committee for approval, we submitted it with a cover letter, which was essentially a restatement of what you see before you, and describing what we thought was important for the purposes of the NCAC, the guiding principles that would be run throughout the bylaws as we drafted them. We've taken the same 4 guiding principles and really adopted them as our first policy for the policies, procedures, and references, so that they're always forefront to the reader and also to the officers as they try to wade their way through what appears to be a lot of different provisions affecting their activities. But these are the overarching, I guess, principles that we all decided were the most important.
If there's any questions about that, there's a bit more detail in terms of where things are. But Candace, if you're okay with that, we'll go on.
Sounds good to
Uh,
me.
Okay.
Okay.
We have a policy
And
which is.
let me just stop you. And if anyone is watching this through video later, and Candace, if you wanted to go through the document itself while Tom's going through these slides, it might help you just see at a glance what the detail is without having to actually read all of it. But that might be something you could do from your computer.
Yeah, I could do that. That sounds good.
For this presentation, I've hidden the slides that are the details, but in the one that's in the packet, no slides are hidden. So this is just I did a little bit of a hiding there. So basically, we just said people need to have access to the records. And by the way, they are, as you well know, they're open to the world. We've had.
And I think conflicts of interest is yours again, Wyatt.
Oh, this is one of those things where we have a small group really of people, but there can also be all sorts of different pushes and pulls towards some resolution of the issues before the committee. And so it was important that we at least require conflicts of interest to be declared by the principals in our meetings and subcommittee meetings. And you'll note as you look at any of the videotapes and the minutes, as well as the agendas, that's one of the first things that we have incorporated into our meetings so that we have those declared early on. And then there's a very, I think, a fairly detailed provision in the procedures about what happens when a person declares a conflict and how that's to be resolved. And that's essentially based on the honor system. But this is essentially the key principle that we adopted.
Thank you. And we've got more information in the PP&R document under policy, and also in the references. There's quite a bit more because it's a subtle thing. We've learned a lot about conflict of interest as we've developed this. So there's a lot of subtleties.
One thing that just occurred to me is we didn't have to have a conflict of interest statement for this meeting because there is no business to be transacted.
Exactly.
If there was business, we would have had to have done that.
Yes.
If you would like to know about surveys and straw polls in gory detail, I will be happy to go through that with you.
Well, since Michael and I did that one, I'll just say, poor Tom. It's not like all of our bullet points, but we did spend quite a bit of time on developing information in both the policy and under the procedure section on how you go about writing surveys if there are major ones that are going to go out to the membership for important things, and then straw polls that are more casual questions through Zoom meetings or whatever to just gather feedback that is not binding. They're not votes. But like at feedback sessions last year, we did quite a bit of this to gather casual input from people. We did straw polls. The community plan committee may be doing an actual formal survey later on, and did so a few years ago. So we provided quite a bit of information about this and resources that people who are working on surveys can go to, like the Oregon State University Survey Research Center, et cetera, because it's a very complex topic to do a formal survey. Okay, any questions on that? Okay.
I don't remember who did this one.
Well,
Wasn't
I did with Mark.
Okay.
So this is a pet project of Mark's, and Mark, you're welcome to comment. But we've received a lot of a variety of requests from outside organizations for various things, and didn't really have any policies on how to react to them, and particularly anything regarding fundraising kinds of things where there can be really good work. People are doing excellent projects, but we have certain restrictions from the county on what we're allowed to do. So we put together a fairly significant set of procedures and policy actually around how we respond to various types of requests for engagement, whether it's from sending out emails, having speakers, taking positions on things, et cetera. Both requests from us, and then later there's some actual policies on our sending information out. So, Candace, if you'd like us to go into this a little further, we could.
No, I think I'm okay with this one. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
fine.
Okay.
Yeah, we should also comment that we are a creature of the county, so we are actually a part of the county infrastructure. So we must act in their best interests, and they're the judge of that.
Yeah, that's a good clarification, Tom. All of our meetings are subject to Oregon Public Meeting Law, and back to conflict of interest. We're considered public officials, even though we're volunteers.
Well,
Did you want to?
I also think it's worthwhile saying to Kansas that this provision doesn't necessarily state the obvious, but I'm going to state it, and that is so that the committee can maintain its absolute neutrality on issues that are brought before it and protecting its essentially reputation as a neutral body.
Yeah, thank you. So one of the things that we do actually go into as one of the types of requests we get is to talk about ballot measures or candidates, run candidate forums. So this is a fairly lengthy item within the PP&R document. Mark, would you like to add anything?
I would just, yeah, no, I'm glad that we have created this portion. Over the course of the year, we've had requests for the NCAC to partner or to maybe be a bulletin board for some fundraising activities in the community. We've had a request for folks to come and speak on a ballot measure in the fall, and again a ballot measure in the spring. And I just think the organization is going to continue to have requests for various reasons, and all of the reasons, the ballot measures and the fundraising were all good things. It's just we're trying to put a little bit of parameters around what the NCAC, their prime mission is to do. And in terms of fundraising, I know Sarah's backed us up and said we have to really stay out of we can't raise funds ourselves, and when we endorse a fundraising thing, when we put it on the website, it is a tacit endorsement of that thing. And so we have to be neutral on that kind of stuff and kind of stay out of that. So I personally am really appreciative of this part because we have gotten requests, and now we have some guidance as to how to handle those.
And I think to Mark's point, those requests have actually helped us write this. So we have real world things to respond to. But one thing that's happened that I think has been really nice that's come out of this is that the different really good fundraising kinds of things like the support for the mail person and the road warriors project and that kind of thing, we're able to raise money through other means, which made us feel much better. So it turned out that those were very successful. Okay. Thank you. Next slide. So, Tom, why don't you handle this one? I know you worked a lot on this.
Gee, I don't remember doing that.
Well,
anyway.
I did too, but you took some of it as I can do it if you'd rather. So
no, it's all right here in front of you. Based all formal statements and official positions of the NCAC must be approved by the membership. Basically, we don't anything that we say, we want to make sure that there's at least a majority of the NCAC in favor of what we're saying. And that anything that we decide, or we will make sure that everybody has access to.
And
It's sort of
yeah.
mother and apple pie thing, but needed to be said.
And we do go into more than the policies, probably in the procedures on how we go about doing that, and how not just our the majority opinion, but also the minority opinion should be also represented, and how that can be facilitated. So and time things on that, particularly if we have to respond quickly to a county request or something where they want our opinion on something. It could also go on, like there was a recent thing for middle housing report that was an interim report where the committee wasn't completely done but needed to be able to submit something to the county. And so we were able to set up an urgent board meeting and then urgent membership meeting to be able to get input from the NCAC to be able to put in an official position, which was then submitted by Mark. Okay, thank you. And Wyatt, I'm throwing this one to you.
You're muted
You're
again.
muted.
Yeah, the amount of vetting work that would have to be done for people to determine whether in fact somebody is entitled to vote was more onerous than not only the budget, but the manpower budget would sustain here. And the point that was made was that people typically will follow the rules as long as they know what they are. And so the chairman, before any vote, is going to be stating the membership qualifications, and let the participants judge their own qualifications based on what they've been told, so that they can essentially self-police their votes. And that way, we don't have to have an elaborate system of vetting voters at given meetings, because we just don't have the infrastructure for that.
And Wyatt's a former federal prosecutor, and Wyatt, you had some really interesting data on how this usually works.
Yeah, I mean, the people who basically break the law are very minimal, and they're in a very small minority. Everybody else tries to do what they're supposed to do, because that's kind of the informal contract that we all sign up for when we work in this country. So it really is an idea that people will self-police, and they'll probably do it better than we could anyway.
Thank you.
Nancy,
Uh-huh.
I got a quick question about the voting thing. I think where we're going to probably be the most concerned about when people vote is probably when we come to a vote on the SCR cap limit. I think that's going to be pretty contentious thing that's going to happen. So I'm hoping that everyone will be honest when they do vote, and we don't have a lot of outsiders coming in and saying that they live here, own property here, and vote a certain way. That's my only concern for them, because that seems to be the most controversial thing we're probably going to have to vote on as a community. So I think Wyatt's right. I think people will be honest, but I'm just hoping that they are. That's my only.
I hear you.
Yeah.
So that is something that we're going to go into later in these PP&Rs, but we do want to set up a membership registration that's annual, so that we do have a more accurate and up-to-date list of our members. And we hope that will help as well. I don't know, Mark, you're going to have to weigh in on this. I think the NASTR vote cap, will that come out of the NCAC, or have you?
Well, I think
is that something?
if I recall, it was about a little over a year ago that we had the discussion about is that right, Candace? About a year ago.
Yeah, I kind of remember Sarah saying, we're going to wait till October, because I wanted to see a full year, I guess, of how that was working out. And I think then we would say, and I hope the options that we have are going to be a little more specific rather than generic. And I think she was for that. So I think it's going to happen sometime in the fall or something.
Okay.
That's how she put it.
Okay. Yeah, I had forgotten that, the timing of it, but yes, that sounds right, giving it a year to run and see what issues come up. So,
That's right. Yeah.
and so you're probably right, Candace. I meet with Sarah each month. Well, the CAC chairs in the county meet with her, and it just hasn't come up lately, but we
right.
meet on Monday, so I'll mention it to her and try and get maybe a timeline on that.
But you do raise a good point, Candace, and we do have a voting section that we're still working on, actually, that we
Yeah.
were going to kind of tackle next year in detail. But a lot of what we have already should cover some of it. And really what we were going to write was more technical on how do we set up the Zoom polling for voting purposes and that kind of thing. But you're right. I do think, I guess I trust, maybe I'm being a little more optimistic, but I do trust that we're not going to get a lot of people who are not members coming in to vote. But if we see that, we need to have, that is something we struggled with actually when we were doing the bylaws too, is what if you know someone's voting who isn't actually a member, and how you would bring that up. And that's a tough one. I'm just gonna, because I know that is a really contentious issue, certainly.
Well, Nancy,
So-
isn't it true that anyone can call a roll call vote?
Yes, they
Yeah.
can. And I think that
That's
could
a
be
way
done.
to get, it's a little cumbersome, but everybody has to say who they are and how they vote, right? And
Yes, and that's
I
a
think there'd
provision
be a
that's already in there.
recording of that, so, but
There would. We were looking at one point on, could we go back and see whether there was someone who shouldn't have been voting who did, and change anything. And I think the decision was no. That would be a really I think that came from county council that no.
Yeah.
In fact, Michael has just joined us, who's right in the middle of a very interesting discussion. Michael, welcome. On what we do if Michael, Candace brought up that if like there's an STR vote on STR limits, it could be a very contentious vote. And how could we make sure that people who are eligible, only people who are eligible to vote could vote? And so, roll call voting would be one. We've talked about the honor system for voting, et cetera. But if you actually had a group come in with ineligible people to make votes, which I would hope very much that wouldn't actually happen, even with a roll call vote, if they stated their name, and would you be able to go back later if you determined they were not eligible? My guess is no, but I would think you could call possibly a special meeting to revisit it. But do you have any thoughts on that? Our illustrious parliamentarian is here.
Hi, Candace. How are
Hi,
you?
Michael.
Good. I saw Gregory yesterday and today too. He found, I don't know if he found that mammal out there, but there was one out there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's out there. All the turkey vultures and eagles are going after it.
Well, good. Everything
Yeah.
balances out, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, that's an interesting situation that you throw. First of all, if somebody votes that's illegal, you can discount that vote later on. And if that threw the voting into contention, that would be something we'd have to deal with. But it is what it is. You can't allow it to occur, nor can you ignore it. So there we're thrown into the fray, and we'd have to make that decision. On
I
a
think,
roll call.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll let you finish, Mike. I have one thing to say about that. I think the membership
Okay.
registration probably would control some of that, I think, from people trying
Well,
to.
yeah, that's the second thing that I was going to say, is that if we're going to do roll call votes, then we have to have a record of everybody who's there, which means, we'll have to take a couple of minutes to have everybody at least sign into the chat box. So we have a name and a little bit about who they are. Otherwise, we'd have to do it directly person to person online. But if it's really an important deal and somebody calls for roll call vote, then what we have to do is list everybody so that we can write down what their vote is. That's what a roll call vote is.
Yeah, I think that would be intimidating enough, probably, that people who are not eligible would not, particularly if they know it's recorded, right? And they're on there as recorded.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of mechanisms in there besides the goodness of people to to handle it. But you raise a really good point.
Well, you're
Yes.
talking about a situation that's not going to occur, but you have to be prepared just in case it occurs. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and she's
That-
anticipating quite the one. So yeah. Does that answer your question, Candace? Are you
Yeah,
feeling pretty comfortable about that?
I think we're set up to, with the rules to handle that. So.
Thank you for raising that.
That's a good question, by the way. It's not something that we've actually dealt with in terms of how to conduct such a situation.
Yeah, that's I mentioned before you came on, Michael, that we're about to write those, but they'll probably be early next year when we
Mhm.
in the new term.
Yeah, and we will have to include the fact when somebody claims membership, how they're a member. And I
Right.
think that should probably, embarrassment will be a good.
And that's part of the registration process when we get to that in the, I don't know if it's part of the presentation, but if you go to the procedures on roll call voting, it actually lays out what should be included, or not roll call voting, in membership registration. It lays
Okay.
out exactly what's included in terms of how people are members.
But you know, Tom, the embarrassment thing goes with any election, any voting, so on and so forth. And that includes, by the way, as an example, national elections.
Okay,
If somebody is
I'm
called
going
in.
to cut you off now, Michael.
Okay,
No,
I'm gonna cut
Because
you off.
Don't
we
go
don't,
there.
well, we could go forever on that, and I want to move us on. So thank you, though.
Okay.
I share.
Well, can I ask
But-
just one clarifying question? And I
Mhm.
know you've planned for this. I don't have the bylaws right in front of me, and I know it's in there, but you know, sort of the trust, the owning of a trust of a property or a house, and
Yes.
yeah, I think it's just two. I think that's where we landed on that. Is it?
Yeah,
think
I
it's
can
Yeah,
throw.
four.
Is it
It's
four?
up to, it's up to 4 per
Okay.
type.
Okay.
Per
Okay.
type. So you
Okay.
could, and that was the best we could get from
Yeah,
the county
okay.
council on the
You could-
limits.
you-
And
You could have 12 people representing
Yeah.
one property.
right, it's unlikely.
Unlikely, but
but you
could happen.
So you have the categories of basically you are either a property owner or a member of a trust that owns a property. You can be
Yeah.
a resident, and either a resident that's, say, renting, or a resident who's a property owner. You're a resident, you're a property owner, or you're a business owner. Those are the 3
Yeah.
categories. And in any of those categories, you can have up to 4.
Yeah.
I had
Here's
a
a
question. So what happens if one LLC or party owns 5 properties?
Yeah, that's
Each
per
property
property.
get- Per
Each property would get the same amount?
Mhm.
You see, the underlying argument is that voting applies primarily to property, secondly, who owns the property. And that's an interesting thing. We haven't really talked about that. And by the way, Mark, you may not know this, Candace does, and Nancy, the rest of the committee does, but our property here that I'm on, we have 12 members.
Oh, yeah, I know that. Yeah.
Okay, but the little deal is that we also own individual deeds.
Mm.
Hmm.
And that's an interesting little quirk. Not that we're going to take advantage of that at all. That's not the point, but
Yeah.
it can get convoluted.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's your example, Michael, is what led to some of these restrictions. So
Yeah,
in terms, even though
yeah.
you own 12 deeds, I think it's the property ownership itself.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's but yes, does that, Mark, did you want to comment further though?
Yeah,
on-
I'm glad Candace brought it up because we will have votes and some will be contentious and some won't. And, but for me personally, I'm going to have to expand what I read before the vote to address that and make sure that that LLC, you know, whatever is in there as well. So that people know the rules before they vote. You know, so I'll
And
just have to make sure I have that. So thanks.
So
I
you've
think-
got plenty of time till next Tuesday to get. No.
for the statement. I think the statement actually does cover it though.
Mhm.
What it what it does.
We'll go for.
We'll go
yeah,
through
we'll
the
go for
statement
that.
when we get to
Okay,
procedures.
okay, okay, yeah.
What Mark's talking about, Candace, is we have a statement in the procedures for the
Yeah.
chair to read before
Mm.
for the first vote of any meeting that
Yeah.
basically states how eligibility for a membership
Okay.
is. And it goes through broad brush, but then it has in it, I believe, Mark, that addresses what you're concerned. But
Okay,
if you need more
perfect.
information about the detail,
Perfect.
you could go here.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I think we have that
Okay.
covered. So now
Okay.
where are we?
Are we done?
Uh-huh.
Honors. We spent a lot of time on honor. That's a good thing.
That's a good thing. So, and now we're getting right there to membership registration. So the policy, and Tom, this is where I probably should have the document in front of me, and I do somewhere, but I don't remember it's under policy, under procedures, that goes through that definition of what would be included under membership registration. But basically, thank you. Thank you. Look at you doing that. It basically wants us to have a registration annually, but also have a button on the website so that somebody who says, oh, I just moved here, or I just discovered there's an NCAC because of Susan's great outreach task force, can go in and sign up at that point. And then, so we do have a more current thing, and that all this is listed. We actually worked quite a bit with county council on the bylaws development to make sure that everybody except the name and the membership type is public, but everything else can be kept private. So through OPML, Oregon Public Meeting Law, we can still keep those private.
Yeah. We don't know that this is going to be, well, my problem with this is that if someone first finds out about the meeting in mid-year and says that, well, I deserve to be a member, but I'm not currently registered. Does that mean they don't get to vote?
Yeah, no. And so we can refer them, but in terms of a vote, we would have that. If it goes to a roll call vote, they'll have to state. But in terms of other things, no, they do have to put their name and contact their email when they just vote for a normal Zoom meeting. But Gary and I have actually, the secretary, Gary and I have been talking about how do we set this up, because we need to have it for the June meeting, because we didn't do it in April. It should either be in April or June, how to set this up. And so he's working on that. But a lot of people are going in right at the meeting time to sign up instead of in advance. And so we need to send something saying, warning, give yourself about 5 minutes or 10 minutes, because if you don't know your one of your addresses or something to do this registration, or maybe we send out a note to do it ahead of time. Or there's, I mean, just thinking on the fly, taking too much time, but if someone's gone in and registered, they're sent an email saying, you're part of our annual registration drive, please fill out this form. So that's something that's kind of ongoing right now. And if you have any thoughts on that, Candace, as part of the communications task force, feel free to talk to Gary.
Yeah. As we go through these things, we think of other corner cases that,
Right.
which is what I was just guilty of.
Right.
And
I
here's
think,
the
So-
other.
oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Sue.
I think too, Nancy, at one of our subcommittee meetings, you brought up the point that people who own land don't have physical addresses. So we'll have to be mindful of that when we're asking for information to register, because they have tax lot ID numbers, not physical addresses.
Correct. Thank you for bringing that up. And I'm a case in point. And I see Mike Churchill has joined us. Welcome, Mike. We are.
Note on that. Okay,
Pardon
go
me?
ahead. I'm
So-
gonna, off to the side, I'm gonna make a note on that. We need to add.
Thank you.
Yeah, apparently it won't
So-
let me make note.
No. So Mike, this is quite casual, as you can see. Please feel free to ask any questions as we go along. All the documents are in the meeting folder on the events page. And we're going through the policies right now. Then we will go into the procedures, a bit on the references, and then we're going to go into some related bylaws amendments.
So I've made a note there. We need to add that to this list is address or tax ID.
Yeah, or maybe parentheses, or I know you don't like, well,
I don't like-
maybe Maybe, oh, you do have parentheses there.
I do have,
Maybe a tax ID or something. Yeah, tax law ID.
okay, we'll figure that
The
out.
field needs to be able to have that.
Yeah.
Okay, and so this talks about some of the different things about privacy that we just summarized. So I think you can just go back now to the regular.
Let me, can I say something about registration?
Sure.
Just in case, we should have it in mind that there may be somebody or a group of people who registered after the meeting began. And the default is they have a vote. But if you want to limit things like that, then you have to put that into the bylaws as well. Yeah,
Right. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you, Michael. I don't think we would want to limit it if someone comes in late.
No,
I don't think we
no,
can.
no. But
No.
the point is that we have to be ready for that kind of a thing.
Right.
Is that capability already there?
Well, I think in terms of the annual registration or the new registration, they would get hit with that field when they're coming in
Oh, right.
to
Okay.
a certain
right.
meeting.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we had a huge discussion last year with the bylaws on whether we actually keep a roster and verify membership, and decided that's just not feasible. And really, hopefully it will never. We've done a lot to build up trust, I think, over the past year and a half, and hopefully that's happened. Now we'll find out. And I do think what we've already talked about with roll call voting, et cetera, hopefully that will be okay. But we'll find out, Candace, with that particular vote you mentioned early on. So
Yeah, it was
it'll be a good
also,
test.
I had a question about what Michael was saying. Like in state and federal elections, you have to register by a certain period so you can vote. And it seems to me if someone comes in last minute, well, like you said, it's a logistic nightmare trying to figure out how to get them. To me, it seems like, well, if they're really interested in voting, they would make sure a day before, a week before, to register in the way we want them to. That's just my opinion. I just think if they show up late, it's like, well, too bad. I mean, I hate to say that, but that's how I kind of feel about it.
No, I hear what you're saying. I think just to go back to last year with the bylaws and the county council, the very strong wording from the county council was we need to be open and able to accommodate people and not have restrictions. And having any kind of membership restrictions at all was like pulling teeth. And it was quite a compromise and quite a battle. So I hear you, and I know that for other types of voting, state and federal, local voting, that has those limits. But in our case, we're under the OPML and county rules. So
Yeah,
so
we're also under Roberts, and what you say, everything you said, Candace, is true. I mean, it seems to me as well that they ought not to, because the crazy end of that deal is somebody during the discussion part of the motion feels that they don't have enough people backing them, and they make some phone calls and a whole bunch of other people come in. I mean, you got to cover that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the reality is that in national elections, they have laws that control that. We do not.
Okay.
If anybody comes into a business meeting late, they're late, but they still get to vote.
I think that the other thing that Candace should understand too is that there's a couple of safety valves that are built in to our system. The first of which is that whatever we say to the county about our position is advisory only, and the county is free to accept or reject those as well. So, and we've also, I think, developed a pretty robust system for filing minority reports,
Right.
which the county has indicated they're just as open to as the reports of the committee. I would say on a more mundane basis, I would question whether the word button in the first paragraph should be different than that, as opposed to tab.
See.
Yeah, I hear you. So that's a really good point, Wyatt, about and I think we had talked about that in one of the earlier policies about reports to the county, and we did get that quite a bit from the county last year with the bylaws is that actually it was Commissioner Doug Olson that was attending a lot of our meetings last year. And he said that the county commissioners actually look really carefully at the minority reports and they look at the vote. And if it's something where the vote is like 98-2 or 98% to 2% or something, then they take the majority report very seriously. But if it's something more like 60-40 or even 70-30, they look really hard at that minority report. And sometimes they actually go with the minority. So that's a really good point, Wyatt. Thank you for bringing that up. That should also alleviate any concerns there.
Yeah, I remember Sarah saying just because on certain issues, there was a slight majority from one way. She does not mean that the commissioners would go that way. And that's why she said, when people send their statements in on why they're for or against, they really look at that. So you're right, maybe, yeah, I think that's really important to
and so in the procedures, we actually go through some detail on how to set up those reports so that the minority gets their opinion in, and then people can individually, like White said, also submit things to the county, and they consider that as well. Okay, let's move on. So the button is usually, maybe there is a better term. If somebody can get us to that, like today, because we're sending everything in. We're sending everything in on tomorrow. So if you guys can get that today, that would be helpful, because a tab may not be what we're talking about.
A link?
Well, a button is actually, it's not a term really for a website where you've got just a button sticking there saying, like the donation, isn't that a button?
It's a link, I think.
So link, I think, is the
they usually say link.
I think the proper term would be link.
Let's call it a selection.
A selection?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's not edit here.
Somebody figure that out.
Leave that for the editor.
We'll give that to you,
for
Tom.
the editor.
Okay, on to parliamentarian. Michael, policy 9.
Yeah, parliamentarian. It's pretty darn simple. And the parliamentarian provides advice and counsel, is hopefully quiet. Things get out of control or nasty or whatever, then the parliamentarian will simply do what I have been doing. That is, provide some insight and some advice in reference to Robert's rules. And the parliamentarian ought to be available, or at least the committees and task forces should have access to the parliamentarian as well. Things might come up in that. And then once in a while, there's also a little training to be done, particularly at the beginning of potentially contentious issues or big time decision-making things. Then, we can begin the meeting with some comments that everybody follows. That's all.
And we're very fortunate to have Michael as our parliamentarian. He has a lot of experience, which we will not go into right now, but moving on. Policy 10, grant applications and fundraising, which is basically any of that needs to be approved by the NCAC membership. And then we have to send it forward to the county for approval because they control all of this, and they really don't want us to be doing a lot of fundraising. We have gotten input from Sarah that we can request for funding for our particular activities, hosting the website and the email system and that kind of thing, but they're hoping to be able to fund us in the future themselves.
Yeah, and the ideal,
and this is where you would
have to have any money.
Right. So, but we do need some. So, and Tom went through a very nice scenario flow chart, which we won't go into now, but is in the document on on how to handle the grant stuff. Okay, next. Okay,
Ooh,
Susan, you are on.
Okay, so very simply, the outreach task force, we use the community plan and how they divided up the neighborhoods, and the goal is to have point people in each of these 10 neighborhoods to then encourage people within those neighborhoods to become more actively involved in the NCAC. And we've got 3 signs out right now, more going up, laminated signs. Tom is putting one at the South Beach mailboxes. And I just at the farmer's market this morning, found someone who's gonna help me with Slab Creek Road. Got one at the Corvallis Beach access and one in the store, but I need to get them in all 10 neighborhoods some way. And we're hoping that it will create greater awareness and encourage people to get excited about the NCAC and what we're doing.
So Susan is actually chair of the NCAC task force subcommittee. It's task force, sorry, NCAC outreach task force, and has been developing a lot of these procedures. So if you have any interest, anybody who's watching this video, or Candace or Mike, in joining this, I think it's a really clever idea to divide up everything by geographic area and have people involved in that.
Susan, do you know the camp up in Wainema?
I know I've been there, but I do not have a point person up there. So if you have any suggestions, please let me know.
Well, there's an office there, and I'm just assuming that that would be the logical place to go.
Yeah, you know what, you're right, because there's a Christian camp up there.
Yes,
And I know the
yeah.
Nesquin Chamber Music has all the performances up there as well.
Right, yeah, okay.
Check that out. Thank you.
Do you have some of those signs?
I have one laminated sign, but I can print them out. I can print out more, and Tom Stipe's wife has volunteered to help me with laminating because she has a machine in the house. So I don't have to run to Salem.
Well, I was just saying, I'll go up to Wainema if you like and introduce myself to those folks. I wanted to do that anyway. And about music, about piano, you know, about their concerts that they have up there. So I'll take one and give it. How do I get it from you?
We'll text.
Okay, I'm gonna take you guys offline and move on to, but thank you. Any questions for Susan on the outreach task force? Okay, there's also information in the procedures section of that and also in the reference. No?
Yeah.
Maybe not references. Okay, policy 12.
I
Updates
should
to
have
the
summarized
document.
this. I should have summarized this rather than.
That's all right. Why
leaving
don't you
the
go
whole
through it,
text.
Tom? Why don't you go through
Basically, because it was a lot simpler before last. It was just a small paragraph. Basically, this is the steps which we have to go through in order to be able to update this document. Well, it isn't this document, obviously. That's asterisk there. It's the PP&R, and just the logistics of it.
And basically, this is designed to be a living document. The bylaws are harder to update. By necessity, they require a 2/3 majority vote, et cetera. But the notice is similar. But in terms of the reference section, the executive board is able to update that because it's mainly nothing controversial in there. And as long as they have a unanimous vote, they can update it. Otherwise, it goes to the membership. Any policies or procedure updates go to the membership. But we may see that in any given meeting, an update, because these are supposed to be easier changed than in the bylaws.
Yeah, for instance, in the references, there are contact lists, and they will change with distressing regularity, I'm sure.
Right.
So.
Okay. Username of title Wyatt.
Yeah, we were just confronted with the thought of how much reputational damage an organization like ours can sustain by just somebody pretending or exceeding their authority to pretend or represent themselves as a representative. And so we thought we better put in some safeguards about that, and this is what it is.
Yeah. And by the way, the reason it's important is we can be disbanded. They can eliminate this group altogether if the county decides that we're not behaving well. So we have to make sure we behave well and appear to behave well.
Okay, thank you. I think this is pretty standard for any organization too, that you want to make sure that that the person's authorized for using the name or title of the organization. Okay. Onward. Meeting documents.
I think you might be familiar with this, Candace.
So yeah, Candace, you could go through this one. Basically, all of our membership and subcommittee meetings shall be documented through video recordings, documents discussed at the meeting, and written minutes. and they'll all be preserved in the archives, and written minutes are described in procedure 3. All meeting documents should be provided in a folder on the NCAC event page prior to all meetings so that attendees may review them. So like our committee used to have the agenda posted, but now, and thank you, Candace, we post a folder, and that way we can add documents to and from and make adjustments all the way up to a meeting as needed, which we did liberally with this one. A lot of late updates, and people don't have to worry about the link changing. And then, and then, Candace, do you do it, or does Gary do it? Actually moves these into the archives after the meeting?
Oh, Gary does that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And including the video, so all of that
Yes, he
goes
does
in.
that. Yeah.
And it goes back forever. Documents need to be kept in perpetuity. So any questions on that? And thank you again, Candace and Gary. Policy 15. Urgent meetings. So do you want to go through that, Susan?
Sure. Sorry, I've been texting off the side with Michael arranging for time. So let's see. Urgent executive board meetings can be called for the reasons bulleted here. Sometimes they have to be called, well, ideally, the chair would like to be able to discuss it with the executive board before calling a membership urgent meeting, but sometimes that may not be, it may be unable to do that. A good example would be if there's a huge, large-scale emergency, which we hope we do not have, but it's always possible given the Otis fires that we had a couple years back that were infringing on us. Urgent membership meetings are called to address things that, like FEMA is a good example, where we really had to submit a report to the county as far as what we as Nesquin saw as critical for our viewpoints. And let's see what else. This is all I see on this this slide.
Yeah, that's it. The document goes into a little more, but basically it's to expand a little on the bylaws on why you might want to have an urgent meeting. There's some question last year on whether people wanted, whether we would ever have a need, and I think we've had it at least twice this year. One was for FEMA, like Susan mentioned, and one was for the middle housing report that suddenly we had a deadline. So it's been handy to be able to have this. And urgent meetings in the bylaws allow us to have up to as much as little as 24-hour notice to call a meeting if necessary. Whereas other membership meetings require 14 days notice. Any questions? Okay. And this is this kind of meeting. Information only, no quorum required. Okay, moving on. I'll pick this one. So right now, the county wants us to be able to provide anything that we correspond with in an official capacity is subject to Oregon public meeting law. And so there may possibly be something, particularly in a contentious issue, where emails may be requested from the county. And that's kind of covered in another policy, but it would make it simpler to be able to have that provided if we each have executive board email addresses. Right now, our committee is the only one that has one for the bylaws. And so I try to communicate as much as possible through it. And that way, what this requires is that the secretary actually is responsible for maintaining those board member emails. And if an officer or committee subcommittee chair changes or task force chair changes, then the email goes with to the new person. And it just needs to be set up on our computers or phones to be something we can send out or receive from. But the records are there. So if there was ever a request, the secretary could provide those records. And so this is kind of new. Gary's looking into how to set that up for the other offices. Nobody's objected to it. It's just a matter of logistics of getting it set up right now.
Yeah, right now this is a wish, not a do.
Yeah, but hopefully soon. Gary's working on it.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So that's the end of the the actual policies, does anyone have any overall questions on any of the policies before I go into procedures? That I'm going to go pretty fast through. Okay, Tom?
Okay. That's basically the honor system directives. That should have a, we have details on that. Wanted to look at that.
Maybe just to give people an example. In fact, Tom, would you mind if you just threw up the document, the policies, procedures, and reference document, just to give people an idea of what we're talking about here in terms of detail,
Okay.
I guess.
Well, all of the text that is in the document is in this, but
Okay.
would you like them
All
just
right.
to see the document?
Just for grins.
Okay.
Because then they can also get an idea of what the references section is like. Sorry.
Okay. Well, it wanted me to keep, I had to make a decision on whether or not to
I
keep
could share it.
the,
I
no,
could
it's
share
all
it
right.
if you
I got
want.
it. I got it.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Is that a PDF? No, it's a doc.
Mm,
I don't know why I'm not
That's,
getting the.
yeah, you have the Word. I can bring up the PDF if you want.
Well, I would rather have the doc. I'd rather have
Okay.
the view of the. Oh well. So I can go down here to the equivalent. Procedures. Okay.
So Tom has it set up with the table of contents, so you can go back and forth between the table of contents and any policy, any procedure, any reference directly, which is really nice.
Navigation pane. That's what I wanted. Okay, there we go. I don't know why that disappeared, but it had.
So this goes in, the policy on honor system goes, we've already gone through, goes into what it is. This now goes into more detail, including this paragraph we were talking about earlier with Mark that will be added to the agenda, as well as to the statement that the chair reads before the first vote of any meeting. And we've been doing this now for a couple meetings, membership meetings. So the detail on that would be available in the chat if anybody has any questions. So anyway, it just goes through more detail. So sometimes procedures have accompanying policies and sometimes they don't. Sometimes a procedure might apply to two different policies, or sometimes the policy might refer to two different procedures. So it's kind of an interesting formatting, but thank you.
And in fact, there's at least one case where there is no policy, but just procedures because of
Yeah.
the reference from the
Right.
from the bylaws.
Right.
You want me to continue this or
No, why don't we just go back to the presentation and keep it handy though, because I think when we get to references, I'd like to go
well, it's
back
already handy now. Yes, I can do that.
Yeah, but I don't want to go through all the detail on the
Okay.
like we did with the presentation.
Okay. So
oh, and you have that right there. Okay. OPML is just, I'm going to kind of move us forward a little bit. It's just that everything's available. We have to follow OPML and what that means. That we are keeping records, etc. Meeting minutes requirements. We do require minutes in the bylaws, even if things are videotaped, and that's come up a couple of times with various subcommittees or whatever, because if you have minutes, they can be brief, they have to include certain things, and the next slide probably shows all the things they should include, but they can be brief and they can let people know if that's something that they want to go watch the video for and not have to plow through a 2-hour video.
okay. So I'm going to the high level now. If you want details,
That's good.
I can go.
Nope. Unless
Okay.
anybody, Mike or Candace, if you want any detail, just speak up.
Because we got details more than you want.
We have a lot of detail. Wyatt, do you want to cover notices?
Yeah, hold on, let me read it real quick. Yeah, this is just another really adjunct to all of our openness and transparency, so that anybody has the opportunity to run for office or nominate themselves or somebody else or participate. And so the whole idea here is to elaborate, at least this is one section to elaborate on the transparency as well as participation by people.
Thank you. Procedure 5. Okay,
That's
we're
the
working
one
on
we're-
this.
Work in
We'll take
progress.
special effort on this when the new year starts. But we do have procedures for taking roll call votes and that kind of thing that are already in the bylaws, but we'll work on this too.
Yeah. And what in particular has to be put in and how
Right.
how to do that.
Right. Okay. Basically, this is just how we make changes. The bylaws themselves talk about how to change them, but this gives more information to the bylaws subcommittee for handling requested for change, which we're going through right now.
Well, we can go into details if you want. Otherwise, that's all you get.
No. I just meant we're going through the bylaws. You'll actually
which
see
we-
it
which
here
we are doing
shortly.
now.
Yeah.
I missed which reflexive that was.
Sorry, I wasn't clear. Reports to outside agencies. So this is one where we have a lot of detail, and this goes into a lot of what we've just talked about on minority reports and that. Would anyone like to see the detail on this, since we did have that discussion? Might be worth it, Tom.
Okay, there is a bunch of details. This is one of 6 slides.
So we won't go through them all, but we just want to show you that there's a lot of information on how we make these reports, including minority reports, information that needs to be included in the report when they're sent. Why don't you keep going through the slides? What needs to be included, what goes into the minority, I mean, there's a lot of detail, but a lot of thought went into this. Keep going.
These 3 bullets here are really the details.
Yeah, you go ahead and go through you came up with
Okay,
this. This was
basically,
nice.
basically, if the county agrees with what we said and verbalizes their support, then we can go ahead and submit to an outside agency. Because, as I said, we're a creature of the county, so we're speaking for the county. We want to make sure that they agree with what we're saying. If they don't come out and explicitly support it, then we have to think about if we really think that we're going to be, it's important for us, for instance, to send a letter to FEMA that the county is either neutral about or doesn't respond. Basically, then we have to have really the economic decision as to whether or not we want to go ahead and submit it as of representing ourselves, which means we are then outside our protection by the county, and we are no longer covered by liability insurance. NCAC is covered by liability insurance as long as we stick to our bylaws and then what will be our P&R. If we step outside that, then we are liable. I suspect this is going to be a very high barrier to doing anything that the county doesn't explicitly approve.
But I will say, though, that they're usually pretty good about getting back to us. And so I think and there would be the option of going out and getting liability insurance for the NCAC just for that particular thing if we had to. It probably wouldn't cost too much, but anyway.
As a practical matter, most likely people would get together offline and become a different organization.
Yeah.
That's my guess. STR is an example of that. Various factions of it. If Sonoma County says don't do that, we don't do that. End of discussion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a nice way to lay that out. Any questions on this? So we have reports to the county, and then we have reports to outside agencies. Are kind of the 2 different areas.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I make a comment there? It just occurs to me that next year season for this committee, we might want to consider who writes that report and under what circumstances that occurs. Otherwise, it's going to be dropped on the president, and we might actually want to give that authority to the executive board or whatever. But that's when we get to something like this, that's going to be an important activity. and needs to be handled with care.
Yeah,
My
I
guess is
think
that there will be an advocate, and that advocate will be the Stuckey.
Uh, well, but do we want that? I mean, you know, if
Well,
it's,
the-
if,
we
We have
actually
to
do
approve
have
it.
it in the bylaws too on who's responsible. And it's basically within the executive board to write it, but there would be a designation of somebody to do it. So yeah, that's a good question. Good point, Michael. We should look
it's a procedural
see.
thing that we
Yes.
might discuss. Yeah.
Yeah, good idea.
Okay.
Let's make you're the secretary. Why don't you make the note?
Okay.
You're
Okay. I
described.
got it. I got it. Yeah. Yeah. I'm
That's a
described.
good
Yeah.
idea.
Slap me.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's a good next year thing. Okay.
So removal and suspension from position is something that we spent quite a bit of time, and you'll see in our bylaws amendments, we realized we had a little issue here. So I'm going to turn this one over to Wyatt. This is something where we hope we will never have to use, but so Wyatt, this is you.
Yeah, again, we thought that this was probably shooting a mouse with a cannon as we looked at it, but it was necessary to create a procedure so that the executive board and the association, the committee was not left without some ability to provide due process here. And so we wrote it in. The removal procedure gives an option for the person to resign, or if they want to retain their position, to argue their case before the membership. And also, if they're an elected position, i.e. a subcommittee head or head of one of the members of the executive committee that's not on a subcommittee, they are required to be removed by a vote of the membership, as opposed to just removal by a vote of the executive board.
And actually any subcommittee member, because they're elected. So that was the kind of the fundamental thing of the bylaws change. Yeah, thank you. So we wrote these to be fair, hopefully, and notice, but also have a position, because if we don't have this in the bylaws and then the procedures, and you have an issue, you can't remove somebody. So this was in the bylaws. This expands on how we go about it. You'll see when we get to the bylaws amendments that in the bylaws, we had said any executive board member would have to be removed by the membership under the procedures, but that the executive board would have the authority to remove any subcommittee member or task force member. And we realized, though, that the subcommittee members are elected, so they should be also go to the membership if one of them needs to be removed. So that's a change to the bylaws. A fairly minor one, but
Yeah,
it's there.
the principle being anybody who's elected has to be unelected.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Wyatt. So organization of subcommittees and task forces. This is something that I think, Michael, you did a bunch of work on. Tom, anyway, it gives us working details of what the subcommittees do and the task forces do, and some procedures on how to set up things at the beginning of a year so that people are trained on what the bylaws are and what the policies are. And there's some things for being able to elect a chairperson, so that the parliamentarian or the NCAC chair comes in and organizes. So we felt this was really helpful, because when our subcommittee started, we were all new. We didn't know even how to set up a meeting under OPML. We didn't know about OPML. How do you even start? So we put in some procedures for that. Any questions? Okay, procedure 10. Okay, the monitoring task force is something we're pretty excited about. And Susan's been doing a lot of work with Guy Sievert, who suggested this committee, this task force. Do you want to talk about this, Susan?
Sure. So it's a neat thing, I think, that this monitoring task force is going to give community members a lot more information on what is going on around us and within our community that we might not even be aware of. So Guy suggested 4-point institutions that we should reach out to before every general meeting. sheriff, fire department, sanitary, and the water district, so that we're aware of what's going on there. And then there are other groups, organizations, state parks, a big list that we have in references for the monitoring task force to also, you know, as needed or over a period of time, always check in with. So, and this would include like the work that Candace Miller is doing with the elephant seals, so that we're always aware of what's going on our beach, so that if someone comes to the village, they're not putting themselves in harm's way, potentially. And they're aware of what we're, you know, encountering, that they might not be aware of if they pull into town at midnight. So in a nutshell, you'll see more in the reference section. We've drilled it down, got point people, phone numbers, emails, etc., to hopefully make it easier. And the monitoring task force will verify that these details are current at the beginning of each fiscal year.
Thank you, Susan. One of the things that we just decided on it yesterday, actually, in our subcommittee meeting, is that this task force will actually report to the executive vice president, which Alex is actually quite excited about, and we're excited about, because it gives that position something concrete to do to manage it. So they won't have their own chair. It'll be Alex, kind of like Gary, the secretary, is the manager or chairperson for the communications task force. And so Alex will be able to take to the executive board suggestions for speakers, for example, to come, because we feel like that'll be added, it's added to his responsibility list as well, to organize speakers or programs for the membership meetings. So hopefully that will encourage more members to attend. If we're not just talking about bylaws things, we can talk about something of interest to the community, and get the community's input on various things. It could end up being much more close to our mission to have this information. And also it can get into what we talked about before, reports out to these different agencies. It may be one thing where we're receiving reports, but we may, as a NCAC, want to be able to send information about our opinions out to these different agencies as well. So right now, I think Guy Sievert's doing it all, and he's ready to stop. And it's a nice thing where somebody could take one or two or three of the different agencies to monitor and have a fairly small task, but be involved, an important task. So we're pretty excited about this. And Susan's done a lot of work with Guy on getting these things in the references section. Thank you, Susan. NCAC archives. Basically, we're going to have more procedures on what goes into the archives, but right now everything is. But there's some questions still on how it's saved, and the county needs to be saving it. Part of the reason that we're not final on this yet is that the county has got a big project on how they can do their own archives, which would include ours. And currently everything is being handled through Gary on this, and is doing a great job, but we're supposed to keep everything in perpetuity. So right now, I think we are kind of an example in the county for how our things are accessible, and you can go to any meeting in our archives and see everything. So, but this will be going into how do we ensure it's kept up, if there are any issues. So
yeah, we can't depend on commercial non-paid storage. That may not last forever. So we have to.
Exactly. Thank you.
Okay.
Procedure 12. Wyatt.
This is the adjunct to the section that was in the policies. And it just describes essentially how to go about declaring the conflict, and how the decision gets made to either continue on or to withdraw, and how it's supposed to be done by way of a process, so that people could be questioned by the membership. Even though we have really no formal method for disqualification, we hope that a withering question by the membership would prohibit somebody from exercising a conflicted vote.
Thank you.
What-
And there's more information in the references about this as well, with resources for people to go to from the Oregon Ethics Commission, and a handy dandy flow chart we kind of lifted from them as well. Thank you. So this has a lot of detail, which we're not going to go through, but that we talked about earlier under policies that expands on how we handle requests. How many pages?
There's 6 full slides after this if you went into it. Not that I'm trying to discourage you.
So speak up now, but otherwise, I mean, we've kind of touched on it in the policy. Okay, 14. So the bylaws talk about meeting dates. This is going into times and mode. The bylaws require that Zoom be at least a minimum of any kind of meeting that's held. We could also do hybrid, but in-person meetings are not allowed. Strictly in-person meetings. And so this is setting that the time for our membership meetings will be at 10 a.m. unless changed by the executive board with at least 14 days notice. And then we've set a time now for regular executive board meetings for the 4th Wednesday of each month at 3:30 unless otherwise ordered, and then just noted that special and that other meetings can be scheduled and held as specified in the bylaws. So any procedure 15, stop me. Okay. Michael and I workshop. This is one that Tom hates because there are lots of bullet points and he's planning on rewriting at some point, but
Oh, no, I rewrote this one.
oh,
This
you
one
did this one. Okay.
I did
Well,
this one.
straw polls that you, okay. Anyway, so there's a lot of information in here on how to conduct a survey. I think enough said.
Yeah.
Procedure
6 slides.
16. Same. This
That
is
one
one
I
you
did not reformat.
Okay. You can see the difference when you go into the policies and procedures document. Onward. Okay, this is more information about the outreach task force on what to do, and I'm just gonna, unless anybody cares, I'm gonna move on. But lots of great stuff in there.
So,
And then references. You want to go to the document?
yeah, this is the things that are in there. Don't think we updated it since I did this last. Okay, and get out of that and into references. Okay,
So the contact information will be these emails that we were talking about. So
Yeah.
the policy shows that there should be contact emails, but this will actually list what they are. And I think we probably might want to change that to emails because I don't know that we have other contact. But anyway, and then this is this incredible list that Susan and Guy put together for the
yeah, let me get rid of
monitoring
the-
task force.
Yeah, this is an extremely long list. This is, as I said, things here are going to change. So we want to be able to have the flexibility of changing them, which is why they're in the reference section.
Right. And then reference 3, the bylaws state that we are under the auspices of Robert's Rules of Order latest edition, and this just specifies, or newly revised, and this specifies what that edition is currently. Okay, the famous
would
map.
look- Yeah, this is referred to in the, what was originally in the bylaws, but now has been relegated here. And it's basically, that's our area. And this is new. This is new.
You got it. You got the colors.
Awesome, love the color.
Yeah, I had this without the colors and I got rousing boos out of it. So
So this just shows the neighborhoods. Tom also has the hat of being the editor for the community plan subcommittee, and so we've lifted that and put it in here. This is really helpful.
Okay.
And then the job
Okay.
descriptions we're working on. Some of them are done, some of them are not, but it goes through more information than are in the bylaws for the job descriptions for some of the officers and also for the committees and task forces that are not standing.
Yeah.
Oh no, I guess even some that are standing, like communications.
Yeah, that probably should go.
We have
We'll leave it
this.
for now.
Yeah, we need to look
Yeah.
at this, Tom. I think we have it in the procedures, so we should.
Yeah, I
Look at
think we
that.
did do that when, so maybe
might
that
want-
pesky editor probably didn't do that right.
I think, yeah, because that was also a bylaws thing. So, okay, and then reference 8 is about the conflict of interest resources, and the key one is that ethics guide. It's really an
And-
interesting thing to read if you have to be under the if you have to state your conflict, and then
Well,
this is a
you-
handy slide that came out of it that Tom modified for us. So
Yeah,
it goes
I
into
sliced
a
I sliced some pieces out that didn't pertain to us, so it's digested a bit.
Okay, and that's it for the references, right? So
That's it.
okay, you wanna stop sharing? So does anyone have any any questions about the PP&R? I know it's a quick thing, it's very dry. I appreciate people hanging in here. Because we're gonna go to the bylaws amendments next. But that it will hopefully be short. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and share the bylaws amendment.
You know, the PP&Rs, maybe they're boring, but it sure was a lot of fun getting there.
You're right. We've had a lot of fun, haven't we?
Yeah, we really
A
have.
lot of
yeah.
work, but a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's been a great
Yeah.
committee. All right. So this is a document that just goes through what a summary of our changes are, and then we will show you the actual draft document, which is also in the meeting file. It shows the red line version of the bylaws, but this is kind of a summary of the changes. So one is the policies document name change, which is basically we've changed it from policies and procedures that were in the bylaws to policies, procedures, and references, or P&P to PP&R. So that all that's stating is that wherever it is in the bylaws is P&P or P, it gets changed. Amendment 2 is a new bylaw, which is that an NCAC member shall not hold more than one position on the executive board unless chairing a task force is a defined duty of the office. And there's a little grammar issue there, but unless chairing a task force, no, it's a defined duty of the office. Anyway, because we just felt like having multiple positions might be tempting if we don't have volunteers, but it limits opportunities and reduces the focus on the job that people should be doing. So that would be a new statement under Article 4 in the introduction section of that, which we've also changed to introduction from nothing. Amendment 3 is office of the vice chairperson to add those duties we were talking about, which would be these two duties here, would be to add the chairing the monitoring task force and planned speakers. And so far, everybody's thrilled with that one. Office of the Secretary. When we did the bylaws, we knew that there were just a ton of things in the bylaws regarding secretary. We created the communications task force as part of this with a plan to put a lot of the detail in the policies and procedures whenever we develop them. So that's what we're doing here. We're simplifying the bylaws job description from all this to this, basically. So what we're doing is taking out this section and moving it to the communications task force. And so instead of saying that they actually maintain the records themselves, we're ensuring that the records of the NCAC are maintained as described in the policies, procedures, and references. So it's not just all being moved to the, I shouldn't say that, I misspoke. It's not just being moved to the communications task force, it's being moved to the job description within the policies, procedures, and references. So they're still in there. It's just simplifying it for the bylaws. The removal from office is what we talked about earlier, that basically we're expanding on the process of removing from office in the PP&R, but we found that we had this issue of the people who were elected being able to be removed by the executive board. And so we've changed that so that there are two different areas where that we needed to change in the bylaws. One was Article 4, which is officers, Section D, about removal from office. We've changed that to any member that's elected to their position by the membership, not just any executive board member, but any member elected to their position by the membership may be removed from that position with or without cause by a 2/3 vote. So the only difference is that it's includes subcommittee members. Otherwise, it's the same. And then under Article 7, which is subcommittees and task forces, we just moved the section on task force members being able to be removed from their position by the executive board. We moved it from Article 7 to just be simple under the same paragraph. So any questions on any of this so far? Okay. Vacancies and elections. So we noticed that we had a different because of what's happens currently, where we didn't have a candidate for secretary at the election meeting in April. We realized we didn't have anything in the bylaws to handle that situation, that if we go into the new term, we don't have anybody. So we basically added something here on what to do should that eventuality happen. So if there's no one for the April meeting, then basically what we're saying is that we have some text in here that the election should be held at the annual membership meeting in June or at the next membership meeting at which one or more candidates are found. And that the current office holder shall remain in the position until the first executive board meeting of the new fiscal year, which would typically be in July, the third week in July, at which time a vacancy would be declared. And then it goes under vacancies. So obviously, if the current person doesn't want to continue until that time, then they can resign, and then it becomes a vacancy immediately. But this at least provides the option to have continuity in that time in between. And then under vacancies, we talk about how instead of just having vacancies that would be from a midterm, someone resigning midterm or leaving midterm for whatever reason, we have an option for how we fill also if we go into the new term without somebody. So that's the only difference here. What we do is the same regardless. And we also added, and Michael, thank you for your work on this, that we also added that there are different options. We can reassign tasks among executive board members, or the executive board can appoint a temporary person, an interim person, to handle the tasks until we identify somebody. Hopefully we'll be able to do all that before the next year, but at least this gives us something to handle this situation. Any questions on that? The communications task force is similar to the secretary, where we just left everything, all the responsibilities and the bylaws, and we're moving things to the PP&R here. So we're simplifying. So currently we've got this long list in the bylaws. We're simplifying it so that it's basically this, and all this detail goes to the policy, procedures, and references.
Which is why we had that list in the policies and procedures, and you didn't think we needed it there. We do.
No, we have, what I was saying is I think we have it under the procedures section and not in the references,
No,
but I
it's
could
not
be
there.
wrong. It's not there.
It's in-
Okay. It's in
No,
the
it's in the
references.
it's in references, which we can
Okay.
move.
Yeah, well,
That's-
let's talk. Okay. Thank you.
If it's moved, that's an editorial change, and it only
Right.
makes it harder to change rather than easier, so I think it's
Sure.
okay.
True. Yeah, we'll have to look, because I thought monitoring and outreach were in the procedures section. So
No, it's under, I don't know why it's scared. Could be your faulty editor did it. I don't know.
it could be your faulty chair. But anyway, okay, we'll deal with that. I think it should be consistent wherever we have outreach and monitoring, we should have communications responsibilities. So we'll talk. And then for some reason, I was thinking the references would be for ad hoc, and anything standing would be in the policy or procedures, but we'll check. I think you're right, they're editorial. Okay, so anyway, as far as the bylaws are concerned, basically this detail moves to PP&R, wherever they go in the PP&R. The monitoring task force is brand new, so we're putting that in the bylaws as a new Article 7, Section D monitoring task force, which we originally had as a policy in the monitoring task force, although I think we can take this note out as we submit, right? Because it's now out. So really, we take that out. It's a new section, Article 7, Section D, which moves the current Section D to Section E, but that's pretty minor. Yesterday for the committees, I was confused about something else, a totally different thing. So this one's pretty simple.
I was just whinging about changing the letters is all.
Yeah, but it turned out I was wrong. So the only time I've ever been wrong in my life, but yeah, I was wrong.
We've captured it.
So this one though, I think I got it corrected. That's why we have a Rev 5 at the moment. Okay, so but basically this goes through what we think should be in the monitoring task force and what it's about. Amendment 9 is membership meetings. Mark wanted to have not just have the NCAC person alone calling for urgent and special meetings, but have it in consultation with the executive board if feasible. It may not always be feasible. So that's the only change here, is that they're added here. And executive board actions. For some reason in the bylaws, we had the the executive board may make recommendations to the membership for approval in regular membership meetings, and really they should be able to do it for any membership meeting, urgent, special, or regular are the three types we have. And so I had properly noticed that basically that's it. So are there any questions on those? I'll go to the document too, so you can kind of see what it looks like. So this is the document that shows our changes, and you can see there's not much. Oh, that's the clean copy, darn it.
Not much at all.
Not at all. Where is the red line? It said it was the red line. Huh. Oh, no, it was Article 3. Okay. Well, am I seeing any red line? Shoot. It does say clean copy. Let me just pull it up.
Scroll up, it may not be this page or all of these pages. One I saw had very few of it.
If you go to review and then do next, it'll find the next change.
Yeah, no, I just pull for some reason. Let me go to to this thing. Pull it up from here. Okay, can you guys see this?
Yes.
Okay, so this shows the changes. I don't know what the heck. The red line version. Okay. So basically, wherever a lot of that's red in here is the changing from the PP&R or PNP to PP&R.
Actually, I don't see red. Are we
I don't
supposed
see
to be
red
seeing
either.
red?
All right.
Looks clean to me. Sorry.
I will do it again. Sorry. Thank you for speaking up. Okay, can you see it now?
Oh, there, yes, now we see red.
Okay.
I see red.
Just had to bring it to the PDF version. Sorry. Okay, so So wherever you see red, a lot of the places is just changing policies and procedures to PP&R. So this is the officer section where we've added the statement about no more than one person position on the executive board. Vice chairman's new duties, secretary duties moved. This has the issue of vacancies in terms of nominations and elections. We've added at the end what happens if there's a position unfilled at the end. And then vacancies, removal from office. There's changed to this elected position to the membership from executive board member. And then we've moved task force members may be removed from their position by the executive board. We've just put that under removal from office. And then vacancies, we've talked about that situation where we've reworded it in case someone's not identified at the April meeting that we've already gone through. This talks about the special membership meetings of adding with the concurrence of the executive board is feasible to calling a meeting. And the same with an urgent one, just adding that for Mark's request. And then this is showing that we've taken out the word regular on actions that the executive board can make recommendations to the membership. And then this shows that we've taken out the subcommittees or task force members may be removed from their position because we've moved it up to Article 4. Can you guys see this okay? Is that any better? Sorry. And then this is showing that the communications task force responsibilities are being removed because we've moved them to the PP&R. It shows the new monitoring task force that's been set up. And this is just the policies, procedures, and references again. And that's it. So in the file is the clean version. It shows what it will look like without all those red line changes. But so the packet that will be submitted to the membership will show the bylaws changes, the red line version of the bylaws and the clean version of the bylaws, and then the policies and procedures as presented, policies, procedures, and references document. So that will be with a cover letter. So any questions, comments at all about what we're doing? Because this will go out hopefully tomorrow to the both the county and to the membership prior to our final meeting on May 31st to adopt all of this. So please don't hesitate to give us any suggestions at all. Okay, well, I really appreciate your time today to come and hear all of this and your excellent comments along the way. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us anytime with comments throughout. This will be a living document, the PP&Rs. As you can see, the bylaws are as well, but less so. And so we will be continuing to, assuming we get elected again for next year, we're going to be continuing to work on this during the next year. And you can see some little placeholders where we've identified some things. And Michael just had a new one for us. So I will just throw out these huge kudos to our subcommittee of dedicated people that have spent a lot of time over the last year and a half to develop the bylaws and the policies, procedures, and references. And it's just been a really fun project. So, okay, any other further comments? Okay, I adjourn the meeting at 3:16 p.m. Thank you all so much, and I'm going to stop recording.